take a breath with me. So that song is actually the beginning of this talk. I first encountered that song in my practitioner studies on a practitioner retreat. And it touched me in a place that I still can't articulate. And I would sit for years after that with my back to a speaker and Jamie Lula blasting through every cell in my body and just sob as something inside of me recognized the truth of this song. So this month, we're looking at reciprocity of community, as community. And the context that we're looking at is really about understanding that we live in a reciprocal universe, that everything is a cycle, that there's no separation, that, in the physical realm, trees fall, they decay, they feed life, they grow, they fall, water evaporates, it rains. Everything is a cycle of reciprocity. And the key in these teachings that we oftentimes, I'm hesitant to say we don't want to get it, because I don't think it's so much that we don't want to get it, so much as it's a painful getting sometimes, is that we are what we think. That we, as the phrase goes, it is done unto us as we believe. Now, if that was easy, if that level of responsibility was easily embraced, we would be overrun. We would just have to build complexes of megachurches. The truth of the matter is, I think it's the most difficult part of our teaching. That's why oftentimes in classes, students will refer to it as the R word. We're more comfortable with the F-bomb than the R word sometimes. And that's okay. So this morning, we're looking at celebrating the triumphant journey. And I think the first order of business is let's really get clear what the heck we're actually talking about. What does it mean to celebrate? Because for many of us, it means to throw a party. For some of us, it means going out to dinner. Right? For some of us, it means getting a gift. Well, if we go back to the origins of the language, it literally means to commemorate or honor with demonstrations of joy. I don't have to have a party to do that. I could do that in the interior of me. And when I do, in a reciprocal universe, you will see that. Because we're all tapping into the same joy. Right? It's a vibration. In the 1600s, make widely known, praise, and glorify. So what if we're really talking about demonstrating joy, praising and glorifying the triumphant journey? So what the heck does it mean to be triumphant? Well, most of us will think of it as a battle, conquest, because that's how we have framed it in our lifetime, and it's what we were handed. But if we go all the way back to the 14th century, it means a spiritual victory. Perhaps it meant that before we got really deep into war with one another. Right? And I think there's a component that happens in the translation of this stuff where we use our idea of God to make us victorious in battle, and then all of a sudden we've connected spiritual victory with a battle conquest. It doesn't take much to figure out how we got here, but it does take some effort to get out of it, right? Change your thinking, change your life. So now we're talking about giving praise and glorifying and demonstrating joy for a spiritual victory. Kind of changes things. But what's the journey? Is it your journey? Is it Stephen's journey? Is it Mary Lou's journey? No. No, it's not. It is the journey. And really, when we get right down to it, journey in oneness is the unfolding of life. We are just its experience of itself in diversity. But really, just like there are gazillions of cells in my body, we are gazillions of cells in the infinite body. It is life that is the journey. I don't have a journey separate from life's journey. I don't have a life separate from life. It breathes me. It is the mind we share. But it's all too convenient to live in separation. Because sometimes living in a conscious awareness of our oneness is hard. It's hard because sometimes the other cells in the body of the infinite do hateful things, do hurtful things. And if we're being really honest, so do we. At some point, we have all engaged in hateful, hurtful behavior, even if it was unintentional. But for most of us, it was intentional. May not have been perceived as evil to us, but to the one on the other side of it may have had a whole different experience, right? But it's so easy for us to separate and point fingers. Now, for whatever reason, I looked back at my job description, and the primary thing that I am charged to do is to inspire. Right? But what is it, and I sat with this, what exactly am I supposed to inspire you to? And I think the big challenge is I won't inspire you to focus on your individual life. My job is to inspire you to be aware of the divinity that is you, that is within you, to spark, to ignite, to inspire your awareness of divinity, of life, of wholeness, of oneness, of our connection that cannot, no matter how hard we try, cannot be severed. You can cross your arms, throw whatever temper tantrum you want, you can act like you're separate, you can declare your separation, and you can never make it so. You cannot. The other thing I think that's really important is that I teach us how to apply this spirituality, these teachings, to everyday life, nuts and bolts. Because it's great to have it in your head. It's great when you're sitting in your meditation to feel it. But how do we take it out of the door with us? How do we walk out the front door and take it to our jobs? How do we manifest it and bring it forth in our relationships? How do we do that? Well, the uncomfortable truth is that we own it is done unto us as we believe. Now, this past week, there have been a few things happening in the news that we may or may not agree with. What is profoundly interesting to me is how quickly we engage in exactly the same behavior that we're vilifying. Exactly the same behavior. I have followed comments on Facebook, and the majority of the friends I have on Facebook are people that I actually have met and know that share these teachings. And I would tell you it's unsettling, but it's not, because we get to be fully human and fully spiritual. What does it say in the book? The whole purpose of science of mind is to reconcile the spiritual, which is perfect, with the material, which appears imperfect. So, we're fully human, and we react out of that sometimes. I saw one post that said, "The entire state of Wisconsin is dead to me." Okay. First of all, a state isn't living anyway. It's just a concept. But isn't it interesting that the problem is an individual in some people's assessment, an individual acted out of vigilantism, and yet we want to go to vigilantism in opposition to a decision that was made by 12 other people. We want to, in our minds, we're vilifying them, everybody involved in the situation, and an entire state. Really? Without ever recognizing we're doing the exact same thing that we're mad about. That's the reciprocity, folks. See, you can't hate more hate to change hate. You can't. And the truth of the matter is, none of us were there. None of us were there. We're having our experience of what we've experienced about that situation. We have thoughts. We have opinions. Neither right, neither wrong. I wasn't in that jury room. I don't know what the discussion was. If I'm being really honest, doesn't matter whether I agree or not. If I get if I get to the 30,000-foot view, I can see how they got there. Okay? Are we willing to distance ourselves from our own opinions far enough to see the whole? Life is unfolding, and I think we get confused, thinking we're supposed to celebrate the events of the journey. I'm not celebrating that my son died, but I'm celebrating his journey. I'm celebrating the part of life's journey that I got to share with him. I'm celebrating his presence and his passing as part of the journey of life unfolding. And it's interesting because if you articulate that, you will get pushback. Be clear. If we stand in the absolute truth of these teachings and refuse to take sides, both will attack the middle. It will. I watched this amazing special on Friday night about 13 children that were essentially held captive by their parents their entire lives. And when I believe, no, she wasn't even in the 13, she wasn't anywhere close to the oldest. She was 17 at the time. Something compelled her to escape, finally. And she got outside the house, and she had a phone that would only dial 911, didn't have any service. Now, this is how deep in not knowing this child was. She didn't even know what a sidewalk was. She was walking down the middle of the road because she didn't even have a concept of a sidewalk. She'd never been on one. But something pulled her. Love of her siblings sparked something inside of her that said, I have to do something, and I have to do it now. It all worked out beautifully. And in this interview, I was so moved. Here's an opportunity to sink into the tragedy of this whole thing. The stage was set to focus on how horrible the parents were, about how horrible these children's lives were. And both of the daughters being interviewed said this: I want, when people hear the name Turpin, that they hear strength, that they hear courage, that they don't hear tragedy, that they don't even think about tragedy. They think about courage and strength and healing. Now, if they can get there, and this is just what I say to myself, if they can get there, what's up with you, dude? Right? Because it really is, what are we focusing on? It doesn't mean that tragedy doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that people don't do horrible things. It doesn't mean we don't have painful experiences. What it means is that we stop thinking peace is the absence of conflict, and we start understanding that peace is our nature. It is what we are. It isn't something outside of us that we get. It's what we access within us. Peace is not something you can bargain for. Avoidance, avoidance of discomfort is not peace. It's not. It's ignorance. It's a conscious choice to ignore. I invite you to consider that peace is right there. Love is right there. Wholeness is right there in the midst of every messy moment of the journey. And our invitation is to be the peace that we seek in the middle of chaos. It's easy to stay dry when the sun's up. But how do we stay dry when it's raining? Right? We have tools. We get an umbrella. We go inside. Perhaps when all of the turmoil happens, instead of running into the turmoil with our version of self-righteous indignation, go inward. Go inward. But here's the thing that stops us, is that means you will feel something. It means you will feel the discomfort that you're avoiding. It means you will feel the pain of both sides. And you will feel the journey of life unfolding. And stay there. Stay right there until you come to peace. Then move. It is your nature. It is your birthright. So I want to leave you with this. Questions for the week. How do you experience and feel your connection with the wholeness of life? How do you do that? How do you practice choosing your thoughts and your responses and your experience? And how are you demonstrating your gratitude through the conscious practice of reciprocity? How are you giving the thing you want? Let's take this into prayer. And as I breathe, I recognize it as the breath of the infinite breathing me. The one life unfolding itself as all creation. I recognize further that I am a divine idea in the heart and mind of life itself. And that what is true of me is true of all creation. Every physical form and emanation, fully infused with all that creation is. This is the truth of every cell in the body of the infinite, every individualized expression of life, fully one with the whole. And so I speak a word knowing that minds are opening even as the words are coming out of my mouth. Hearts are being broken open to a greater experience of life unfolding, to an experience of the wholeness of life. Letting go of any polarized position. Letting go of our self-righteous indignation. Letting go of every idea of separation. We lean into, we embrace wholeness, and we stay right there in the feeling until we embody the peace that we are. Grateful. Grateful for this process. Grateful for this unfolding journey in every magnificent, messy moment. So I let go, knowing that the word spoken is the word fulfilled. And I simply step into being all that. And so it